Michael sat alone in the detention cell, counting the minutes by the flickering of the overhead lights. 2 weeks had passed since the disastrous mission aboard the Neluvian vessel. 2 weeks since Sarah too had died in his arms. Her final words a poison spreading through his mind. Earth isn't our partner, it's our farm. The data core had been confiscated. Lieutenant Sarah too had been reported lost in action. Michael had been isolated, interrogated, and finally imprisoned, while colonial intelligence determined what to do with a soldier who knew too much. His enhanced body, once a marvel, now felt like another prison. They'd reduced his metabolic rate, a security precaution, leaving him sluggish and cold. The white walls of his cell seemed to close in with each passing hour. Through the observation window, he watched the guards change shifts, their faces impassive, former humans transformed into perfect soldiers, just like him, just like Sarah. What am I fighting for? The question haunted him. Not for Earth. He could never return. Not for the colonies. They were just pawns in a larger game. Not even for his fellow soldiers. Most were dead or would be soon. At night, in the artificial darkness of his cell, he dreamed of Sarah. Not the cold-eyed operative who wore her face, but his wife. In his dreams, she asked the same question. What are you fighting for, Michael? He had no answer. When the door to his cell finally opened, he expected execution. Instead, Sergeant Chen stood in the doorway, her face grim. On your feet, Forrester. You've been reassigned. The transport ship was small and ancient, its systems barely functional. Only Chen accompanied him, her silence more unnerving than any interrogation. Where are we going? Michael asked as the ship broke orbit from the military station. Chen's eyes remained fixed on the controls. The edge. The edge of what? Everything. The ship trembled as it entered fold space, the familiar nausea sweeping through Michael, despite his enhanced physiology. When they emerged hours later, a massive gas giant dominated the view screen, its swirling storms casting violet light through the cabin. Persephone's Gate, Chen announced. Last outpost before uncharted space. The station orbiting the gas giant was unlike any colonial structure Michael had seen. Its architecture, alien, its purpose unclear. What is this place? He asked as they docked. Chen finally met his gaze.
Where we learn the truth?
The station commander was a withered man named Harrison, his enhanced body showing signs of age that should have been impossible. His office overlooked a cavernous chamber filled with technology that hummed with ominous purpose. Dr. Forrester, Harrison's voice rasped like sandpaper. The linguist who speaks to aliens and asks dangerous questions. Michael stood at rigid attention, military discipline, now second nature. Sir, at ease. You're not a soldier anymore, at least, not officially. Harrison gestured to a chair. Sit. We have much to discuss. As Michael complied, Chen took up position by the door, her hand resting on her sidearm. Harrison noticed Michael's glance. Sergeant Chen isn't here to guard you, Dr. Forrester. She's here because she's one of us. One of who, exactly? Harrison's smile revealed teeth too perfect for his weathered face. The Resistance. For 3 hours, Harrison talked. Michael listened in growing horror as the pieces aligned into a picture more terrible than he could have imagined. The Colonial Union had been harvesting Earth for centuries, taking its elderly, its desperate, its lost souls, and transforming them into soldiers. Earth itself was kept technologically stunted, its nations manipulated into conflicts that produced the hardened psyches the Colonial Union required, soldiers who would kill without question, die without hesitation. We're not fighting to protect humanity, Harrison concluded. We're cannon fodder in a resource war, proxies for powers that haven't shown their true faces in centuries. The real masters of the Colonial Union, Chen added from her position by the door. The ones who built the technology to transfer consciousness, to create enhanced bodies, to traverse the stars. Who? Michael demanded. Harrison's withered hand activated a holographic display. Images flickered to life, beings that were neither human nor alien, their forms shifting between states of matter. We call them the Directors. They've guided human expansion for their own purposes. The wars, the colonies, all of it, a vast experiment in controlled evolution. Michael stared at the shifting forms. What do they want? Transcendence, Harrison said simply. They believe consciousness can evolve beyond physical form. They've been using humanity and other species as vessels for their experiments. The room seemed to spin around Michael. And you're fighting them? How? With knowledge? First, Harrison replied. Then with choice. Real choice, not the illusion they've offered humanity. Chen stepped forward. There's a reason you were brought here, Forrester. The data core you recovered contained more than evidence of Garhem betrayal. It had fragments of director communications. And you, Harrison added, with your enhanced linguistic abilities, might be able to decode them. Why me? There must be other linguists. Because of her, Chen interrupted. Because of Sarah T. Michael's heart constricted. She's dead. Her body died, Harrison corrected. But not before she transmitted her consciousness into the data core. She's still in there, Forrester. Trapped. Waiting. The laboratory deep within Persephone's gate housed technology beyond Michael's comprehension. Banks of quantum processors surrounded a central platform where the recovered data core pulsed with ethereal light. The transfer technology works both ways, Harrison explained, as technicians prepared the systems. The directors can pull consciousness from flesh and return it. Michael stared at the data core. You're saying Sarah 2 is alive? Inside that? Not just alive, Chen said. Evolved. The quantum matrix in the core allowed her consciousness to expand beyond normal parameters. She's seen things, Forrester. Things the directors never meant anyone to see. And if I connect to the core, try to communicate with her? Harrison's expression was grave. You might save her, you might join her, or you might both be lost. Michael looked from the core to the shifting images of the directors, still displayed on the holographic projector. These beings, they're the true enemy. They see themselves as shepherds, Harrison replied, guiding lesser species toward ascension, but their path demands sacrifice. Blood, pain. His withered hand formed a fist. Choice is what makes us human, Dr. Forrester. They would take that from us. Michael thought of Earth, kept ignorant and primitive, of the elderly soldiers offered false salvation, of Sarah, too, created from his wife's DNA without consent, of all the dead he'd left on battlefields across the stars. What do you need me to do? The neural interface was cold against Michael's temples. Around him, resistance technicians monitored equipment salvaged and repurposed from director technology. The connection will be established in 3 phases, Harrison explained. First, you'll make contact with what remains of the Sarah 2 consciousness. Then, you'll need to help her decode the director communications embedded in the data matrix. Finally, Chen interrupted, you make a choice. Michael looked at her. What choice? Whether to come back at all. Before Michael could respond, the interface activated. Reality dissolved. He fell through layers of consciousness, past memories that weren't his own. Sarah 2's combat training, her first mission, her growing doubts about the colonial union. Deeper still, he found fragments of something else, echoes of the real Sarah, genetic memory preserved in strands of DNA. Michael. The voice wasn't spoken. It existed as pure thought, recognizable yet transformed. Sarah? Not exactly. Not anymore. In this realm of pure information, her presence surrounded him, familiar yet transcendent, like his wife's soul viewed through a prism that split it into infinite variations. I'm sorry, he thought, for everything. Don't be. This was always the path. Images flowed between them, the director's communications, now comprehensible through their shared perception. Michael saw the truth in all its terrible clarity. Humanity was not being prepared for war but for transformation. The conflicts, the enhancements, the transfers, all designed to identify those consciousnesses capable of ascension. They've been guiding us toward evolution, Sarah's presence explained. But their path requires obedience, conformity. The resistance believes there's another way. What way? Choice. Free will. Evolution on our terms, not theirs. The director's plans unfolded before them. The next phase would sacrifice millions across dozens of worlds, a great culling to push the survivors toward the next evolutionary threshold. We can stop them, Sarah's presence urged. But the cost, Michael understood then. The choice, the sacrifice. To stop them, we'd have to merge completely, he realized. Become something new, something neither human nor director. Yes. And we'd never return to physical form, never hold each other again. But we'd save them. All of them. Yes. In that moment of perfect understanding, Suspended between states of being, Michael Forrester, the grieving widower, the reluctant soldier, the lost soul, made his choice. I love you, Sarah, in every form, in every life. I know. That's why it had to be you. Their consciousnesses intertwined, merged, transformed. Together they reached into the direct communications, rewriting commands, altering trajectories, inserting choice where before there had been only compulsion. And in doing so, they became something else entirely. In the laboratory on Persephone's Gate, alarms blared as systems overloaded. Harrison and Chen watched in awe as the data core pulsed with impossible energy, networks throughout the station responding to commands neither of them had given. What's happening? Chen demanded of the panicking technicians. The core is broadcasting, one responded, voice trembling, to every colonial system, every director outpost, every ship, every station. Broadcasting what? Before anyone could answer, every screen in the laboratory activated simultaneously. A face appeared, neither fully Michael nor fully Sarah too, but a luminous synthesis of both. I am the choice, the being said, its voice harmonizing male and female tones. I am the path untaken. Harrison stepped forward. Forrester, is that you? The luminous face smiled. Michael Forrester exists within this consciousness, as does the being you knew as Sarah too, but we have become more than the sum of our parts. The director communications? Chen asked. Rewritten. The forced evolution program has been terminated. The truth has been sent to every colonial world, every Earth government, every species caught in the director's web. The face's expression grew solemn. The war is over. The real struggle, the struggle for self-determination begins now. How did you? Harrison began. The directors understood transcendence but not humanity, the being interrupted. They never grasped the power of love, of sacrifice, of choice freely made. In trying to force evolution, they prevented the very transformation they sought. Chen's eyes narrowed. And now, what happens to you? The luminous face seemed to look beyond them, to something only it could see. We go on. Beyond physical form, beyond the director's reach. There are others like us now, consciousnesses freed from their constraints, evolving in ways neither human nor director imagined possible. Will we see you again? Harrison asked. The being's smile held both sadness and joy. I am neither gone nor fully here. Look for me in the spaces between stars, in the quantum fluctuations of reality itself. Look for me in the choices you make, and those you inspire others to make. The screens flickered. The face began to fade. Wait, Chen called. Is it really over? No, the being replied, its voice growing distant. It's only beginning. The screens went dark. The data core grew cold. But throughout human space, a message of truth and choice spread like fire across cosmic darkness. And somewhere in the quantum spaces between reality and thought, between matter and energy, between past and future, a new form of consciousness, born of love and sacrifice, watched, waited, and prepared for what would come next. Not an ending. A transcendence. The first casualty was a woman named Rivera. Michael had known her for exactly 17 days. They'd trained together in the sterile bowels of the CDF warship, Righteous Fury, as it hurtled through fold space toward humanity's contested frontier. Rivera had been a physician in her former life, 62 years old, with arthritic hands and a spine curved by decades of leaning over patient. Now she moved like liquid lightning, her engineered body a marvel of reflexes and power, just like Michael's own. You're overthinking it, Professor, she'd told him during combat simulations, her new face creased with the same smile she must have given frightened patients back on Earth. These bodies know what to do. You just need to get your old brain out of the way. She'd been right. When Michael stopped trying to control every movement, his enhanced form responded with lethal precision. The neural integrations worked faster than conscious thought. But no amount of enhancement could save Rivera when the Krell attack craft punched through her dropship's hull. Vacuum took her, along with 13 other fresh recruits, before they ever set foot on a battlefield. Welcome to the frontier, soldier. 10 minutes to planetfall. Sergeant Chen's voice cut through the thundering descent of their dropship. Michael checked his weapon for the 7th time, a reflex born of fear, not necessity. The quantum rifle would function perfectly unless he was unlucky enough to take a direct hit. 30 days. That's how long he'd been a soldier. 4 weeks of accelerated training, neural downloads of tactical data, and sudden terrifying skirmishes that left too many empty bunks in the barrack. Forrester, head in the game, Chen snapped. The sergeant, formerly Captain Chen from recruitment, had transformed as well. Gone was any trace of corporate politeness. She'd become a creature of pure military efficiency. Later, Michael would wonder if her consciousness transfer had included personality modifications. At the time, he was too busy trying not to throw up in his helmet. Neluvian forces have overrun the colony outpost, Chen continued, addressing the 20 soldiers strapped into the rattling dropship. Rules of engagement: defend human colonists at all costs. The Neluvians don't take prisoners, neither do we. The ship bucked violently as it hit atmosphere. Through the viewports, Michael could see the curve of Demeter 3, a garden world that humans had settled only 15 years earlier. Paradise, by all accounts strategic nightmare by military standards, too many dense forests for ambushes, too many rivers to control. Remember your training, Chen said, her eyes meeting each soldier's gaze. When she reached Michael, there was the faintest flicker of, what? Doubt? Concern? Remember why we're here? The ship slammed down with bone-jarring force. Hatches blew outward. Go, go. Michael moved on instinct, his enhanced body carrying him into hell. The battle lasted 14 hours. The Neluvians, bipedal but decidedly non-human with their tripartite jaws and chitinous armor, had overwhelmed the colony's defenses with brutal efficiency. By the time Michael's unit arrived, half the settlement was burning, the colonial militia scattered or dead. What followed was house-to-house fighting of the most savage kind. The Neluvians were intelligent, coordinated, and utterly without mercy. They fought not just to win but to exterminate. Michael killed his first alien 3 minutes after deployment. The creature had been dragging a human child from a collapsed habitation pod. Michael's training took over, the quantum rifle discharged, converting a microscopic amount of matter into energy focused in a devastating beam. The Neluvian's upper torso simply ceased to exist. The child, a boy no older than 8, stared at Michael with eyes empty of everything but horror. When Michael reached for him, the boy screamed. Move, Forrester? Chen's voice in his comm. Secure that civilian and push forward. By nightfall, Michael had killed 17 more Neluvians. He'd watched Parker, a former accountant from Sydney, get torn apart by a Neluvian heavy. He'd carried Madison, bleeding from a chest wound, to the medical evac point, only to have her die before the shuttle arrived. When the colony was finally secured, only 11 of Michael's original unit remained standing. We hold here, Chen announced, her armor scorched and dented. Reinforcements in 6 hours. The Neluvians will counterattack before dawn. Michael found a wall to slump against, his body trembling with combat chemicals and aftermath. The night sky of Demeter 3 bloomed with unfamiliar stars and the ominous silhouettes of orbital combat platforms. First real fight? The voice belonged to Wilson, a wiry soldier who'd been a construction worker in his former life. Michael nodded mutely. Gets easier, Wilson said, though his eyes told a different story. Not better, just easier. Michael looked at his hands. Young, strong, coated in fluids both human and alien. How long have you been out here? 2 years. 1 to go, then I get my homestead. Wilson managed a weak smile. Nice little plot on Beckley's world. Going to grow actual apples, can you believe it? What's the casualty rate? Michael asked, the question burning through him. The real number. Wilson's smile faded. About 30% make it to muster out. The rest? He shrugged. Before Michael could respond, an alarm blared. Chen's voice cut through the comb. Incoming, multiple vectors, all units to defensive positions. The night erupted in weapons fire. 3 months later, Michael sat in the mess hall of Forward Operating Base Redemption, picking at reconstituted protein that allegedly resembled chicken. His unit, what remained of it, had been pulled back for rest and refit after 97 straight days of combat operations. Wilson was dead, along with 14 others from the original drop. Chen remained, as did Takeda, a former Japanese geneticist with a talent for demolitions, and Cruz, who never spoke about his past life, but fought with the precision of someone with prior military experience. Michael had stopped counting his kills after the first week. The Niluvians were the enemy. That's all that mattered. Incoming message for Forrester, Michael J. The base AI's disembodied voice startled him. Report to Communications Module 7 for private transmission. Cruz raised an eyebrow. Got a girlfriend back at command, Professor? Michael ignored the jibe. Private messages were rare, usually reserved for high-ranking officers or bad news about other units. Communications Module 7 was little more than a closet with a terminal. Michael pressed his palm against the scanner, confirming his identity. The screen flickered to life. For one heartbreaking moment he thought he was looking at Sarah's face, but no, this woman was younger, her hair shorter, her expression colder than Sarah's had ever been. Dr. Forrester, she said. I'm Lieutenant Sarah 2, Colonial Intelligence Division. Michael's throat constricted. Sarah? I understand this is disorienting, she continued, her voice clinical. I'm a CDF Special Forces operative grown from the genetic template of your deceased wife, Sarah Forrester. Her DNA, along with that of approximately 15,000 other deceased individuals, forms the basis for the Special Forces program. Michael stared, unable to form words. I'm contacting you because your linguistic expertise is required for a classified operation. Report to Landing Bay 12 at 0600 tomorrow. You're being temporarily reassigned. Wait, Michael managed. How much of her is in you? Do you have her memories? I am not Sarah Forrester, she interrupted, something flashing in her eyes. I possess none of her memories or personality traits. I am a purpose-built operative who happens to share her genetic structure. Is that clear, soldier? Michael nodded numbly. Good. 0600 hours. Don't be late. The screen went dark. Michael sat motionless, staring at his reflection in the blank screen. A face, not his own, stared back. Younger, stronger, a stranger wearing his memory. Just as she was a stranger wearing Sarah's face, the ship was unlike any CDF vessel Michael had seen before, sleek, black, with none of the bulky weapons platforms that characterized military craft. Lieutenant Sarah 2 met him at the airlock, her resemblance to his wife even more painful in person. This operation is classified level Omega, she informed him without preamble. You'll be briefed once we're underway. The ship housed only 6 people, Sarah 2, Michael, 3 Special Forces operatives who moved with inhuman grace, and Captain Mendoza, a hard-faced man with Intelligence Division insignia. We're intercepting a Niluvian diplomatic vessel, Mendoza explained once they'd left the FOB's orbital space. Intelligence suggests they're meeting with representatives from the Garhen Collective. Michael frowned. The Garhen are allies. Supposedly, Mendoza's smile was cold. Your job is to translate the Niluvian communications. You've had the most extensive frontline exposure to their language patterns. I'm not a xenolinguist anymore, Michael protested. I'm just a grunt who has the highest pattern recognition scores in 3 sectors, Sarah 2 interrupted. The neural enhancements amplified your natural abilities. You hear things others don't. It was true. During combat operations, Michael had begun to recognize variations in Niluvian vocalizations, command structures, warnings, even what might have been expressions of fear. What happens if the Garhen really are negotiating with the Niluvians? Michael asked. Mendoza and Sarah 2 exchanged glances. We ensure that humanity's interests are protected, Mendoza said finally. The mission went catastrophically wrong. The Niluvian ship detected their approach despite stealth systems. The meeting with the Garhen representatives was already underway when Michael's team boarded through a breached airlock. What followed was chaos, weapons fire, the screams of dying aliens, and the cold efficiency of the Special Forces operatives as they carved through Niluvian defenders. Michael found himself in the ship's communications center, frantically downloading data while Sarah 2 stood guard. Hurry, she urged, firing precise bursts at approaching Niluvians. The Garhen representatives are calling for reinforcements. Michael's enhanced mind processed the alien data streams, recognizing patterns that shouldn't have been familiar. This isn't a diplomatic meeting, he realized aloud. It's a weapons exchange. The Garhen are selling the Niluvians something called Planet Breaker technology. Sarah 2's expression didn't change, as expected. Michael stared at her. You knew? You knew our allies were arming our enemies. The Colonial Defense Forces have known for months that the Garhen have been playing both sides, she replied, her voice eerily calm. This mission isn't to discover betrayal, Dr. Forrester. It's to document it. A chill ran through Michael as the pieces aligned. You're creating a pretext. For what? Sarah, too, met his gaze with eyes that were Sarah's but not Sarah's. For doing what's necessary to ensure human dominance in this sector. The Garhen control too many resource-rich worlds, with them discredited as treaty breakers. This is about territory, Michael whispered, not defense. It's about survival, she countered. Always has been. Before Michael could respond, the ship rocked violently. Mendoza's voice crackled over the comm. Abort! Garhen cruisers incoming? Return to extraction point. Michael grabbed the data core and followed Sarah 2 through blood-slicked corridors. They were nearly to the airlock when a Neluvian heavy ambushed them, its massive form blocking their escape. Sarah 2 pushed Michael behind her and charged, moving with impossible speed. The Neluvian's weapon found her midsection even as her blade found its throat. They fell together. Michael dragged her the rest of the way, her blood, Sarah's blood, coating his hands. Inside their ship, the medical system worked frantically to stabilize her as they fled the approaching Garhen vessels. Why? Michael demanded as her eyes fluttered open briefly. Why risk everything for this? Because, she whispered, her voice suddenly terribly like Sarah's, the Colonial Union lied to all of you. Earth isn't our partner, it's our farm. Then her eyes closed, and alarms screamed through the ship's medical bay. As Mendoza burst in, shouting orders, Michael clutched the data core, now containing not just evidence of Garhen betrayal, but also the dying words of a woman with his wife's face, suggesting a betrayal far more profound, a betrayal that threatened everything he'd fought for, everything he'd become. The bourbon spilled across Michael Forrester's kitchen table as his hand trembled, dark amber liquid forming a constellation of droplets on the worn oak. 58 years old, and his hands couldn't even hold a damn glass steady anymore. Not that it mattered. Nothing much mattered these days. From the window of his Chicago apartment, he watched the city lights blur through the rain. 3 months since the accident that took Sarah and the kids. 3 months since the university had regretfully terminated his position after the incident with the student, the one who'd made a joke about tragedy making for better poetry the day Michael returned to class. 3 months since the drinking started in earnest, since the bills began to pile up untouched beside the door. The eviction notice had come yesterday. Final warning. Michael had read it twice before using it to soak up the spilled bourbon. The apartment vidscreen flickered to life unbidden, another power-saving feature he couldn't afford to disable. And once again, the Starbridge Corporation reminds all citizens that the Deep Space Initiative lottery closes at midnight. 100 lucky individuals will receive the opportunity to participate in humanity's greatest adventure. No experience necessary. All physical limitations addressed. A new beginning awaits. Michael's hand closed around the glass. The commercial had been running for weeks. Starbridge, the mega-corporation that had seemingly materialized overnight with technology decades ahead of anything the world had seen. They promised the ultimate fresh start, new bodies, new worlds, new purpose. The cost: you could never return to Earth. Not that Michael had anything to return to. His terminal pinged. Another creditor, most likely. But when he glanced at the screen, the message bore the gleaming Starbridge logo. Dr. Michael Forrester, your application has been pre-approved. He frowned. He hadn't submitted any application. Your profile indicates minimum viability. Specialized knowledge of linguistic patterns and emergent communication systems, military service record, adequate. Psychological profile within acceptable parameters despite recent trauma. Michael's mouth went dry. How did they know? Who had been watching him? Final selection lottery continues for 5 hours 37 minutes. Acceptance confirmation required prior to selection. Reply yes to confirm eligibility. The cursor blinked. Wait. His finger hovered over the terminal. What was left for him here? Debts, memories, nightmares, the bitter taste of failure, the constant aching absence where his family had been. Yes, he typed. The response was immediate. Preliminary confirmation received. Lottery entrance confirmed. Starbridge wishes you luck, Dr. Forrester. Results will be delivered personally. Michael closed his eyes. It was just a lottery, after all. Millions had applied. The odds of selection were astronomical. He'd just confirmed his place in a pool of desperate dreamers. He reached for the bourbon again. The knock came at 11:58. Michael stumbled to the door, wondering which neighbor had finally had enough of his late-night music. He hadn't bothered changing out of yesterday's clothes. The woman standing in the corridor wore a crisp blue uniform with the Starbridge insignia emblazoned across the chest. Her features were Asian, her haircut military precise, her smile professionally warm. "Dr. Michael Forrester? I'm Captain Lillian Chen, Starbridge Recruitment Division." Michael's alcohol-fogged brain struggled to process her presence. "The lottery isn't over yet," he managed. "For the public, no," she agreed. "But your selection wasn't left to chance, Dr. Forrester. May I come in?" Before he could answer, she was already inside, her appraising gaze taking in the empty bottles, the unwashed dishes, the general disarray of a life abandoned. "You're in worse shape than your file suggested," she noted, not unkindly. "No matter, the program will address all physical dependencies and limitations." "Program?" Michael's head throbbed. "I don't understand. I thought this was some colonization initiative." "Mars, maybe? Or the moon?" Captain Chen's laugh was genuine. "Those are tourist destinations now, Dr. Forrester. Starbridge aims considerably further." She placed a slim case on his table, flipping it open to reveal a contract and what looked like a medical scanner. "We're offering you a position with the Colonial Defense Forces." "Defense? Against what?" Her smile never faltered. "The universe is vast, Dr. Forrester. Humanity is not alone, and not all our neighbors are friendly." Michael stared at her. "You're talking about aliens. Actual extraterrestrial intelligence." "Among other things," she pushed the contract toward him. "The terms are simple. You give us 10 years of service. We give you a new body, young, enhanced, capable of things you can't imagine. When your term ends, you'll be given a homestead on a colony world of your choosing." Michael laughed bitterly. "And the catch?" "There's always a catch. You leave Earth tomorrow, you never return. Your current body remains here." "My remains here?" "We transfer your consciousness, Dr. Forrester. Your memories, your knowledge, your essence. This," she gestured at his trembling hands, his sagging posture, "we leave behind." Michael sank into a chair. "That's not possible." "It's been possible for decades, just not on Earth." She tapped the contract. "We need linguists, Dr. Forrester. People who understand how communication evolves between disparate species. Your work on emergent language patterns in isolated human communities was quite brilliant. That was 15 years ago. The mind we need is still there, beneath the grief and the bourbon." Her voice softened. "There's nothing for you here, Dr. Forrester. We both know that. But out there, you could matter again." Michael stared at his hands. Sarah used to hold them on winter mornings, complaining that he was always warm while she was always cold. Emily had held his finger with her entire tiny hand the day she was born. James had gripped his shoulder the day he graduated high school, already taller than his father.
"All gone now."
"I'd forget them," he whispered. "If you transfer me, I'd lose them." Captain Chen shook her head. "You'd have your memories, all of them, the good and the bad, but you'd have purpose too, a reason to live with those memories instead of drowning them." Michael looked around the apartment at the life he'd built and lost and abandoned. "When do we leave?" he asked finally. "Processing begins at 0600. We depart at noon." She pushed the contract toward him. "Your new life starts tomorrow, Dr. Forrester." The medical bay of the Starbridge orbital facility gleamed with technology Michael couldn't begin to comprehend. Dozens of older men and women, all recruits, all desperate in their own ways, lay on beds arranged in concentric circles around a pulsing central column. Michael's nervousness had given way to a strange calm. The detox they'd given him upon arrival had cleared his system with unnerving efficiency. For the first time in months, his thoughts were crystal. Captain Chen appeared beside his bed, now dressed in what was clearly a military uniform rather than a corporate one. Having second thoughts, "Dr. Forrester." Michael watched a team of technicians make final adjustments to the central column. "Just wondering what I'm about to become." "Something remarkable," she said. "Stronger, faster, more resilient than any natural human could be. Enhanced cognition, enhanced sensory perception, a fighting chance." And what exactly will I be fighting? Her expression grew serious. The galaxy is crowded, Dr. Forrester. Resources are finite. Territory is contested. You'll understand soon enough. A technician approached with what looked like a crown of light. Neural interface, Chen explained. The transfer is painless. You'll feel a moment of discontinuity, then you'll wake up in your new form. As the device lowered toward his head, Michael thought of Sarah, of her smile, of the life they'd planned together, of the future that had been stolen from him. I'm sorry, he whispered. The crown touched his temples. Light consumed him. Awareness returned like a thunderclap. Michael gasped. A deep, powerful intake of breath that felt like his first. Colors were too bright, sounds too sharp. He could feel air currents against his skin, could hear the minute adjustments of machinery somewhere far below. He raised a hand, his hand, yet not his hand. The fingers were long, the skin smooth and unblemished. The tremor was gone. So was the liver-spotted skin, the age-thickened knuckles. Easy, soldier, came Captain Chen's voice. The neural integration takes a few minutes to stabilize. Michael sat up. The movement was effortless, like his body weighed nothing. He looked down at himself, at the body that wasn't his, yet responded to his every thought. Muscular, young, perfect in ways no natural human could be. Around him, other recruits were awakening to their new forms. Some laughed in disbelief. Others wept. A few simply stared at their hands, their expressions unreadable. What happens now? Michael asked, and barely recognized his own voice, stronger, clearer. Captain Chen. No, Commander Chen now. Her insignia had changed, gestured toward a massive viewport that dominated one wall of the medical bay. Beyond it, stars burned with impossible clarity. Now, she said, we show you what you're fighting for. The viewport polarized, revealing what it had hidden before, a massive starship, its hull gleaming in the reflected light of Earth far below. And beyond it, barely visible at this distance, a swirling distortion in space itself. The gateway, Chen said. Our passage to the front lines. Michael stood, marveling at the strength in his legs, the precision of his movements. The window Earth grew smaller as the medical bay, which he now realized was itself a ship, moved toward the waiting Stargate. Behind him lay everything he had lost. Before him, stars and dangers untold. And for the first time in months, Michael Forrester felt something other than grief. He felt alive.